Call to order, Liz, your minutes
Yeah.
were as spectacular as always. Could we have a vote, please?
I'll move to accept the minutes.
Second?
I
Second.
Okay, thank you, Bruce. All right, Michaela? All in favor? You're approving the minutes, Michaela.
Yep, aye, Michaela.
Okay, Bruce?
Aye.
Hi, Liz.
Hi, Patrick.
Aye, Randy?
Hi, Jan.
Okay, unanimous. Thank you very much. Michael, you are on first.
So there's a couple things. First, I'll start off with, I submitted a proposal on how to take care of the playgrounds. If we want to use, if the town wants to do it, which I laid out exactly what I would propose to do, which is I would get a quote for designing up to $40,000 to improve the playgrounds that are there, get 3 designs, lay out the designs to the tenants, take it to construct, get it approved, get it designed. I did take a look at, I saw what was sent from Johanna had sent about the playground. That is a possibility to go that direction too. But that direction would mean just reimbursing construct and having them be the lead, which is similar to what we do with a lot of those that are familiar. Patrick, you're on the CPC committee, where we give the money, a grant assurance to an organization, which would be construct, and then they would hire somebody to install the playground. They would buy the playground, and then we would just reimburse them. Because the difference is they'd be installing what's called a residential approved playground, which is not something that the town typically puts in. We put in commercial playground facilities.
Patrick, you have met with or talked to someone from Construct, is that correct?
I have
Mike,
Patrick from
Who?
Mike.
Kathy Wiggins.
Okay, Kathy
one of
Wiggins.
those Irish names.
What?
Oh, have I met with her ever?
No, no.
Many times.
Well, yes, but not on the playground.
No, not, I mean, maybe a year ago. I don't know,
Okay.
not
All
recently.
right, but Michael has met with Kathy Wiggins. And how recently?
I spoke to her today.
Today, good. And it's my understanding that the space that they're allocating to have a playground is where the current play set is. Okay, well, if that's is that the only space they're allocating?
They said they could consider another location for a separate swing.
Okay, I mean, but we looked into that, and the children, you'd be observing, if you have 2 children, you'd have to be in 2 different places. So it seems to me since what they have said they want, which is something in the area where the current play set is now, that if we just do a play set project that's under $10,000, that could be just the trust alone. And we wouldn't need the other money, and you could allocate your selectmen's money to some other project in the
Town's money,
town.
but yeah, yeah.
I mean, the town money could then go, there's plenty of projects in town that need that money. And oh, good. I should sit right here. So that's another option. We simply take, it'd be a trust project, the trust money. One of the problems is that we haven't been very successful with Construct ever completing a project. So if we just said to them, we give you $10,000 to construct a play set that meets Joanna's here, that meets the tenant's requirements, do you think they'd actually do it?
Well, that's what I could offer, to reach out to them about them purchasing the piece of equipment and them hiring somebody to install it, and the town would reimburse them based on the cost of the playground structure, which is about $2,300.
Oh, well, you can get better ones that are like 4,000.
That's the one that, the tenants own.
They like, fine.
Yeah. And then I'd ask them to come up and get an estimate on the cost to install. And they would submit it, and as long as it's a decent price to install, have them buy it, install it, and then we reimburse them for the cost. So it costs Construct $0. And it would get us outside of the requirements of the way I laid it out, which was the town being
Yeah,
And like I said, that's very similar to a lot of times how we do our CPC projects. The CPC awards them to that organization and then our organization just submits for reimbursement.
okay.
So
Joanna, and that kind of equipment is very acceptable to the tennis?
I mean, given the new space restrictions that Construct's imposing, I think that would be the best solution because the kids would have 5 or 6 features in one footprint. You know, and right now what's there is a play set, a very derelict one. So the kids would be thrilled to have a nicer play set with several features versus just having one piece of equipment there. I think it's more cost effective, and the kids are gonna be happy with that. So win-win.
So, Patrick,
I might suggest that we authorize not just the purchase of the playset, but if there's a little bit of, funding required to dispose of the current one and or then prepare the ground for the new one, that we're not basically, I think that it's important that it be as turnkey as possible in terms of funding for Construct.
yeah,
And this is so much less than we were planning on spending. So, if we have up to 10,000 available, I think we should give
I would put
Michael the
everything
flexibility.
under up to $10,000, including costs of decommissioning,
right?
and assembly, installation and purchase.
And-
And basically do it as a grant assurance letter, just like we do with CPC.
Okay.
Give them the grant assurance letter and say, here's what we're expecting you to do.
And it would be coming from the trust. It would be coming from the trust,
Yeah.
the money, trust monies.
Yes.
Well,
Okay.
is there a benefit to, since the select board put 30,000 in from ARPA, is there a benefit to just simply
Using the ARPA
using
money?
that's already appropriated? I mean, is that bad,
We
Michael?
have both appropriated and then the other one kicks off in the federal requirements also. So I would recommend that you take the ARPA funds and put it toward an ARPA
Yeah.
Save
project.
the trust
Save
money.
this
oh, yeah,
one.
do that.
But wait a minute.
ARPA funding is
Hold
gonna
on.
kick in other
You just said,
requirements.
don't know.
We could do it through CPC, it would be much easier. I mean.
It's not CPC.
It's not CPC.
Actually,
More
yes,
trust
it
money, I'm
is.
sorry. it'd be-
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
All
trust
the money received
Oh,
by
that's right.
Affordable Housing Trust has come to through CPC,
Right.
which means you have to follow the CPC
Oh, right.
requirements. And the way we do that is we would issue a grant assurance letter up to $10,000 for including the purchase, installation and decommissioning. And I would do that through the treasurer's office. We typically do those. It come from the trust, but it would follow all the requirements of CPC money.
But why not use the ARPA money instead?
ARPA's gonna have its own.
Federal requirements,
Yeah,
purchasing,
it's so much more
procurement.
complicated.
Okay.
It's under
All right.
10, wait a minute, Michael, it's under 10,000. Wouldn't we?
ARPA doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Okay.
We have to report
All right.
all that back to the federal
Okay.
government on
Yeah.
how we use those.
Okay, good.
Okay,
So
so
we're not
the
using ARPA.
recommendation is to use the trust money.
Use the $10,000.
How about- Could we ask the selectmen to perhaps reimburse us for $10,000? Could,
I'm kidding.
will you vote for it?
No, we can't put it on the spot. There's a quorum here. I was kidding.
Oh, that's right, you're a computer.
Also, is it possible, I mean, has the community garden project been taken off the table, or could that other money be allocated to the community garden project?
I think we should address that at a,
Separately.
yeah,
At a different meeting?
yeah. I mean,
Okay, so,
we can ask.
but let's get a motion on the table that's clear. We have one motion, which we did quite a few months ago for the project that's shown right here, which was a $40,000 project. And now I would entertain a motion from,
I would make a motion that we authorize Michael to work with Construct to produce a replacement for the current rickety playground with a new and improved playground at a budget of up to $10,000, all inclusive.
Second.
Fast.
thank you.
You can get it out of that table.
Yeah, okay. Anybody want to discuss this further? Sounds like, all those in favor? Michaela? Are you? Okay, Bruce?
Bruce, I.
Liz, I.
Patrick, aye.
Rani, aye.
Jan, I.
Mark, I.
Unanimous. Thank you, ladies and
Thank you,
gentlemen.
everyone. Appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joanna, for all the hard work you've put into this.
You too.
Okay, next one. We had hoped to have the engineer's report right today or yesterday, even though it was a holiday. But there's some delay getting the 21E. So we're hoping by Thursday of this week, maybe to have
10 a.m.
something preliminary.
I'm meeting Thursday with Foresight over a number of projects, including this one, to finalize exactly where they are with everything.
Yeah.
As far as getting the completed report. And then I will send you as chair when the estimated completion date is.
Okay, well, now hopefully that completion date is fairly soon because I believe we're supposed to tell Mr. Morris on
April 30.
May 1st, yeah,
Yeah.
whether we're going to go forward.
And I will reiterate to Steve that we have that deadline, and if he's not gonna meet that deadline, we need to know to ask for an extension
From Mr. Morris.
Does that mean we need to have a meeting after this one? before
We
the
need
30th?
to, if, assuming that report is available, we would need to have a meeting before April
Good.
30th.
See that.
So I guess I will send out a notice once Michael tells us what the story is.
Okay.
But I do need a motion because one of the questions that's been raised by the people who live on Glendale is about the entrance parcel, exactly what land we are getting. That's the entrance parcel. And the cost to do the survey to determine exactly is a plus or minus $1,000. But, and I'd like to have a vote to authorize the expenditure of that funds and get Foresight to do
Make
that.
a motion to fund the survey.
Second?
Second.
Thank you.
second,
Okay, thank you. All those in favor, Michaela,
Hi, Michaela.
Bruce,
aye, Bruce,
Hi, Liz.
Hi, Patrick.
hi, Randy.
Hi, Jan.
Hi, Mark.
It's unanimous. Thank you very much.
Madam Chair, I'm sorry.
Yes,
When you're introducing an item, can you tell us the agenda item that it is? I noticed you didn't mention that it was Glendale Middle Road as the group started to discuss that particular proposal. I also wanted to recommend, just for those of us in the audience who may not know you, going forward, that all members of the committee put like a nameplate or something. You know, there's discussion here.
Mhm.
You sound like a very nice person.
Oh, thank
You know, yeah, thank you. So.
I say you know each other now.
Yes, exactly.
Michael, can we get nameplates?
Jackie,
Yes, yes, but
Are we important enough to have nameplates, Michael?
even a little paper tin, something,
Yeah.
you know, so we can.
We can have nameplates?
Place.
Okay. Michael is now going to provide us with nameplates. Thank you. Thank you, Jackie. We'll feel very important now that we have
I did it
nameplates.
backwards.
Okay, terrific. Thank you. I'm sorry, I thought that by identifying as the land that Mr. Morris is giving to us, perhaps I should have called it,
Thinking specifically as it related to, I think on the agenda.
it's item 4.
Request for money to, you know, in spite of not already having the report, but requesting money for that company to continue to do the work to determine the potential development of that site, as I understand.
It's item number 4 on the agenda, which is the approval of the cost to survey the entrance area by Foresight Land Services, Glendale Middle Road land. That was it that we just did. And we approved $1,000 for them to go do that. But thank you for asking.
I have a question.
Yes,
The money's approved and available, but we want to see the report from Foresight, see about the appropriateness of the land construction before spending more money on a survey, I assume.
Let's make it conditional. Well, Michael, just know
It's
that,
very short time frame, though.
yeah.
and it's more complicated because there've been most of the land's been owned for 100 years by one family, so that's pretty easy. But this particular piece was rejiggered, I think, I don't know, within the last 20, who knows about that?
20 years.
It was 20 years ago,
Good. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So anyway, they have to do some research on what's recorded and. who
Yeah,
owns
I
what.
just wondered if you, all right, well, I was just making the point that if the report comes back and says,
Right. But if we have a deadline of April 30th to get back to Hans.
I see.
they need to go.
oh, okay.
So we'll continue. We have approved it, but a point well noted. And Michael's going to let us know. All right. Community forum, we had a wonderful forum. We had a lot of good people. Oh, Jackie, your request,
Table.
talk about our member of our select board has gone into action. And we all,
Liz,
now we
sorry.
have,
Look at that.
that, we,
Except for fast.
Except I spelled their name wrong.
I wear my binoculars.
there you
All
go.
right.
Now you can tell who is who. There you go.
We just need pictures on. I know, well, we just tried to fix it.
All right, Dan, would you like to just give us a quick summary, since I think we have been efficient in our
Yes.
other items?
Trying.
So very, very quickly, we had on March 28th a community housing forum. Many of the people who are here right now were also at the forum, so probably know some of what we had a discussion of. But we went through a quick summary of the housing production plan, including the needs assessment, the process for doing the housing production plan, and then what some of the major findings were, including things that in terms of the plan for the next 5 years of trying to identify a total of 25 units that we would put in somewhere. No specific plan at the moment about where that would be, or, you know, whether it's really more aspirational than concrete specific plans at this point. But that 25 units is what, under the housing production plan guidelines from the state, the housing production plan that they might approve would require that we identify 0.5% of the full-time residences being added every year as capital A affordable housing. So that's where the 5 units per year, 25 units come from. And we had a discussion, quite a few comments about ADUs, because that is one of the things that we're suggesting in the plan, that we encourage some building or development of ADUs. Some people at the forum were in favor of that. Others were concerned about the short-term rental possibilities. But the reality is, for most ADUs, they are set up so they have leases, and you can specify there's a minimum amount of time you have for the lease. So it has to be, I don't know, 6 months, it has to be a year, there's some discretion. So all of that said, as you probably know, the state has underway a process where they're considering changing the ADU regulations. So we're going to wait until we see what the state does, and then probably have a discussion about what other provisions or constraints or modifications that we can or would want to do about all of that. So,
Karen?
and there was one suggestion that if we have for this.
I'm gonna have a seat.
Hi, Karen.
Sorry.
This is Karen Sunderberg, who's our consultant for the housing production.
Thank you.
That meeting was 5:30.
It's okay.
It's
I
okay.
have 5:30.
We just started. We have
Just
Oh, we just started this part. You didn't even need to. There you go.
Franny,
Yes.
just a quick comment, and you probably already know this, but it's certainly not uncommon at all in condo buildings and whatnot for their, and there's lots of legal writing that addresses this. It's not at all unusual or uncommon for condo buildings to have strict requirements on any leases of someone leasing out their apartment or their condo unit, that it can be no less than 6 months, or no more than 2 people per year, in order to execute a lease. So that's something that's clearly should be able to be very easily addressed, to address anyone's concern about short-term rentals.
We go.
Okay. So that's a quick summary of what came out of the housing forum. Anything anyone else would like to add? I know some of you weren't there, so you may have watched.
If anyone is in the audience, we have some time. We're very happy to hear from you if there's any. I don't know, Jackie's read it, but it's 130 pages, so we'd be understood if you haven't studied every detail of it. But if there's any part of that that's of interest to you or you'd like to ask. Karen is our consultant and she was the major author of it. Jan and Michaela were two people they were assigned from the trust and they have shepherded the report, done a yeoman's job, as has Karen. So I don't know, we open the floor to you if you want to say anything about it. If anybody has,
If I could just briefly recap some of the issues that we raised.
sure.
I think we talked about neighborhood character associated with the
Yes.
ADUs. I think we talked about numbers in the plan. I think given the fact that the town has already met its state requirement, I respect with respect to affordable housing, we talked about that. We talked about parking, particularly if you have ADUs, if all the parking was required to be on site. I think we talked about that. I think that we also talked about some language in the plan that recommends that when you have development of butters, be notified early and often in any process associated with that. And I think the language was, I think it was should as opposed to shall.
We changed to will.
Yeah, okay, thank you, Karen. I think, I'm not sure everyone here is clear about the process, whether it's the Housing Trust Committee that does the final approval, or I know tonight there's another presentation before the planning board on the housing proposal. I think it then goes to the selectmen. I'm not sure who the final decider for the town would be. So if you could somehow clarify that, but those are just some of the issues, you know, that we talked about. I think also we talked about developing downtown. We talked about zoning. Someone asked, I thought, a really pertinent question about what does the plan do in terms of actual implementation? Is it just a policy document which doesn't have the force of land use change, but recommends what should be going forward? I think we talked a little bit about density, and that the plan does envision some areas that might facilitate housing. Anyway, those are just the things I think off the top of my head, but I think it was a substantive conversation. But if you could clarify for the audience, what meetings we need to go to next?
About this plan?
Yeah, about the plan.
You're here, so stay on till 6:30.
Well, tonight is, at 6:30 is the planning board, and we're going to present much the same presentation that you saw at the forum, very briefly to the planning board. They've all read it, I believe. And then we're going to have a discussion with them and get their feedback about, and try to answer their questions about all that. And then on Thursday, we're planning to visit the select board and do the same process so that we would have, get their feedback as well.
Can I ask, are we all allowed to attend tonight? Can a quorum of this board attend the planning board and select board meetings?
Yeah. Yeah, and anybody can go to any meeting.
Okay.
Just who's presenting it is the whole committee. There should just be a couple people presenting it, and I would assume that's
Me.
Janet and Karen.
Just want to make sure.
But it's a planning board meeting, and
Right.
and they called it, and they'll run it,
Which everybody can attend.
right, and we're guests.
Yeah.
Yes.
Not me.
Oh, not you, that's right.
Oh, not
Liz is a member of the planning board, so she's got two hats.
They're not approving it tonight. I
Right.
think that's the key.
We're learning about
It'll
it
go
tonight.
back to them for approvals, correct me if I'm wrong,
And-
Karen, to both the planning board and the select board for
Yes.
for their approvals. So the meetings this week are just to get feedback from the two boards. And then there'll be subsequent meetings of the planning and select board where they will have to adopt the plan. And it has to be adopted by both boards, and then it's sent to the Department of Community Development. Is it?
Yeah, now the housing and livable communities,
Is that what's now?
yes, HLC, but yes,
All right.
it goes to them and then they have a review period and they approve it.
So Foresight is giving you some form of report on Thursday, Michael?
They're gonna go over with me because they were supposed to have it, but they ran into some delays, but I'm meeting with them on a bunch of things, so I plan on just finding when they'll have the final report, which was 21E wetland delineation, and then their assessment of the property for what it could be developed.
Have you received any feedback at all from them on that particular property, the Morris property?
No, I'll be hearing Thursday that, and then letting Renee know as chair when they expect to have the final report by, so she can schedule a meeting of the trust to review the document and then.
Would we assume that part of that study would be actual visitation of that property and walking around that property?
They've already been up there.
They've been up there.
They've done the wetland delineations, they've looked at the property as far as the suitability for housing and the rest, and then they're gonna make their report.
I can report that I spent 4 hours with the engineer from Foresight who's doing that work and walked pretty much all of the property and he has a nifty little program on his phone. You love this stuff. On his phone, every place he walked, he could mark if it were wetland. And so from that, he's transferring that onto a plan. But we were able, it was really interesting. I don't know, those of you who live there may know who uses it for deer hunting. There's at least 2, if not 3 deer ladders back there. There's about 3 or 4 bridges over the streams. There's several streams that run through it. There was either a house or a barn in a valley with now has a bridge over it. Someone has been very, very diligent in building
In
drill.
the Swans, yeah, back in the day.
What was it, Swans?
I don't know.
Somebody,
No, it wasn't Swans. Wasn't Swans.
yeah.
A little more recent?
I don't know. Some of the bridges are in good shape. I mean, you all live there. I don't know whether you try.
We don't need to talk about who did it, but.
Yeah, anyway, it's back. So it's very, very interesting. There was a building back there.
House there years ago.
I'm sorry, what was it?
There was a house there years ago.
Was it, the well is still there next to it?
And where the bridge goes over.
Yeah.
That hole there, that was the cellar hole for the house.
For the house? Did it burn down?
I can't even find anything on the house. Nobody knows.
I don't think it burned. I think
who
it collapsed.
owns it. What?
I think it collapsed in on itself. We
Nobody-
used to go there and pick lilacs.
I think the name was Dugan or something like that. Old map from the mid-1800s shows that house, or there's another foundation, old foundation further up, right adjacent to the high tension lines.
Right.
We didn't find that. That's been more covered
You
up.
won't find it. Unless you know what you're looking for, you won't find it.
Because I have now one of the ceramic high tension line pieces that fell off, which I collected, and we walked through an awful lot of muck. I have some very dirty boots from that exercise. And it's beautiful land. It's really, really beautiful.
I have a question. Perhaps you guys do all live around about the property. One question I did have was, are there any cell towers nearby that?
Yes.
Right, where built on us, where all of
The
the
one on the town
solar
property,
arrays.
just
It will
above
be
it.
adjacent to it. Okay, yeah, I know that, there's been a lot of health concerns related to those and some property.
That helps it.
Yeah, so I mean, personally, I would be concerned about that, about, you take that into consideration.
There's already houses next to the cell tower, and I'm just saying, it's-
Yeah, but, there's some emerging research about, the effect that has.
It was a big legal battle that went on in Pittsfield on that.
Yeah.
Oh, pizza's here. That's already paid for. It's right in. Anybody can have some.
That's what they're doing, that's what they're calling about.
Yeah.
That's funny.
I'm a single mom with a son and I'm.
I like the sign.
And buying property and living here and, I have really healthy parents. Then they don't grow. Yeah, so that's.
Thanks.
No, yeah, or people can get stuff with those types of properties where it's either wetlands and there's, issues with that, or there's issues with the towers.
I'm not sure. Not the cell tower from Pittsfield ended up getting taken down. But
Yeah.
I think they're taken down though.
it did.
It did not, no.
Oh, no.
No.
They fought it, I think, for a little
Yeah.
while, but, it's hard to fight it.
You
Yeah.
don't have the money.
Yeah, I mean, there's only 4 cell phones
And
in the
if,
entire country and they.
if cell phones give you like, make you turn you into zombie, we're all, or whatever. If it's okay, I wouldn't mind talking a little bit about some of the questions Jackie raised.
Sure, by all means.
A few more.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right that we're at our 10% requirement. That's all based on an estimate of the census population and, we're above the 10%. This housing production plan was meant as a policy and planning process. It wasn't, the purpose of this, when we funded it with ARPA money, what was that, Michael, a year and a half ago, was so that we could go through a process and kind of identify some of the things that we thought we might need to do, based on what was going on. We were, the basis obviously for that was the recognition at town meeting that affordability had gotten to a breaking point in town, and the support for the Affordable Housing Trust that was evidenced by both the creation of the trust and the funding with CPC money of the initial trust. So I think that they're coming to the end of this process. The goal is to take a look at what some of our options are and to further, put some specifics to try to create some consensus around this. It's simply aspirational, though. There is no land use, there is no force of law associated with the housing production plan. It is simply an aspirational document about some of the things that folks want to do. Now, to give you an example, the Stockbridge Housing Authority has formally voted that they want to explore ways to potentially expand Heaton Court. A lot of folks are well enough to be on their own, obviously, but not necessarily well enough to stay in their home, and to agree that we figure out some ways to do that with local rather than state and federal funding, we may be able to further preference locals over others, which I think would be a good thing. So, we all recognize the need to do that. It doesn't have to be 100% affordable. Projects like that can be 50% or 70%. Karen would know better in terms of the specific laws. I'm just talking in generalities here. I think that related to any specific project, whether it were at Heaton Court or on the Morris property or anything else, we would want to go through the same process we tried to go through, speaking for myself anyway, around the housing production plan, which is a completely open and transparent process. I think the town, both that town meeting and the select board, have indicated a strong desire to keep everything transparent. Most towns around here didn't keep doing all the Zoom meetings for every single meeting in their towns once COVID ended. Stockbridge did that. And I don't think there's any desire for us to have a lack of transparency in a process, whether it's this committee or any other committee. My personal strong opinion is that you have a right to know exactly what your boards are doing, and you shouldn't have to show up if you're at work one day. You should be able to get access to that information at your convenience, not at our convenience, by having to come to a meeting and then read, a set of summarizations that are the meeting minutes. So I just think all these are like really good questions, and we don't necessarily have all the answers yet. But one final point is that Stockbridge right now, as it relates to, seniors and energy, for example, we qualify, as a Biden Justice for community that gives us access to some federal money that almost no other towns in Berkshire County have access to. And I think that one of the goals that we're going to have to now take a look at is whether there are ways to turn in, for example, if we were going to put however many homes up there, could we make some of them a net zero home? I know that, for example, right now there's an EPA community change grant that's Justice 40, that is this type of grant that is available to some of us that that is not necessarily available to others. So I think there's a lot of work still to do on this, but it's not going to be, done in secret. So.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. And I think at the last meeting, we acknowledged our appreciation with this committee for the plan, because it is a very substantive plan, considering this is such a small town. Actually, one of the things that was brought up at that meeting during our discussion was the small town nature of Stockbridge. How do we keep that? That's a real challenge for some of the land use issues, I think, the town is facing. I just also wanted to say, we talked about design. I think the report is kind of very limited in that regard, so going forward, something to consider. We talked about the sewer plan for the town. There's a reference in there to it being completed in January of this year. I think, and I want to thank Michael, he's been very helpful in terms of providing information for all the questions I've asked. So.
I have an update on the sewer plan, which is that they are expecting to have a report done now instead of the end of January, sometime during the next couple of weeks, and be able to potentially discuss it at their first meeting in May. So they don't have the report yet. The report goes to the town before it then is kind of made public. So they're expecting it in the near future.
What's the study this month?
What's that?
The study is this?
The sewer, need the assessment.
Oh, yeah, sewer needs assessment.
Right, and we're expecting a draft hopefully by the next meeting.
Yes,
Which
our next meeting.
I did tell Jackie, as soon as we received, as soon as it was presented to the board to become a public document, I will send a copy to her the next day. So that.
I think we should acknowledge that the needs assessment is an assessment and an evaluation of the entire town's needs. And I think that the likelihood of expanding sewer capacity because of both the cost, and the distance and, for this project or any project we come up with in the neighborhood that these folks have shown up for is, and I don't want to speak for you guys, but I think it's relatively remote that we would invest in a significant expansion. But that's where a handful of houses, could conceivably be done with wells and with septic. I'd encourage everyone, and in fact, Sally is going to invite this board over. I talked to her this afternoon to her house. She and Gary built a $350,000 modular house all in, including the septic, including the well. And it's a beautiful Cape style house that has a little driveway. She's right over behind her old house on Rattlesnake, between the field. And I think that when you talk about character of the neighborhood, I personally was going to speak for myself. I think that's a great model for us, to just, we're going to solve this problem like one house, one family at a time. And I think that character of our neighborhoods is not just about land use. It's about having families who are living in these neighborhoods. And when our parents or when some of the people in this room bought a house here, the ratio of salary to housing costs was 3 or 4 times. In Stockbridge right now, it's 14 to 18 times. And if we're either going to figure out a way to, for some people to be able to afford to raise a family here, we're not, and I personally think that that's a worthy goal, but that's what these meetings are going to be about, is kind of how we try to balance all these needs and also try to do it if we do take action, do it in a way that is most sensitive to those community and neighborhood and character of neighborhood concerns.
Yeah, certainly appreciate that. I think the point was brought up, though, that affordable housing as a model may, first of all, the waiting list, I think for some of the affordable housing here is tremendous.
Yeah.
There was also a comment made, though, that it is very difficult, given subsidies associated with development, to ensure that the people who live in the development are actually from the community because of the big nationwide demand. So for some of the already existing affordable housing developments, people could come from as far as Texas to live in this community.
Yeah.
So I think that's something to be sensitive about, because that was an issue that was brought up. While the intent might be to certainly provide housing for local people, the rules themselves may prevent some barriers,
I can speak
you
to that.
know, to do that.
But in specifically what I was talking about, at least once again, speaking for myself, in the parcel near you is for affordable home ownership. So in that model, you have a lottery. The lottery can be preferenced for folks like number of kids, location, whatever, and using Sally's example, all in it was $350. So let's say a family if we go up to 110% AMI, a family the total earnings for the family could be up to 115 grand. This is not a low salary. It's more than, way more than I make. All right. But, you know, in that model, using the 3X rule, they could probably qualify for a $300,000, $320,000 mortgage. So the difference between what the subsidy would need to be and what somebody at the maximum, maybe it's 30 grand for the maximum, you know, income, maybe it's 100 grand if it's a firefighter or a teacher or somebody like that. That's the money that we would be looking at ways to fund. And in that scenario, you've got a scenario where you actually can preference based on the lottery rules. And the folks who are getting into it, let's say a young family, they're unlike a rental. They only have to make that amount of money or less the day they close. They can't turn around and flip it. So as a first-time home buyer, they're going to be able to like sell it at a 5% gain. Maybe after 15 years they would own it, but they'd have to raise their family and live there for 15 years to get the full appreciation. So this is kind of, I think, what we're talking about more. You know, on rental, something like Heaton Court, of course, that's a rental. You know, if we expand there, and some of the rules that you're talking about absolutely apply there. I think that the home ownership model for young families is really compelling in these types of neighborhoods that we're talking about.
So you're going back, so it's a lottery system?
Yeah, it's always a lottery.
So it's a lottery system, so how will that benefit the town of Stockbridge residents?
You set the lottery rules.
You restrict it to residents.
Or those who live and work in the town get a preference. And for example, on comprehensive permit projects, up to 70% of the units can be reserved to those who live and work in the town. And so you have two pools. You've got the local preference pool and you've got the for 70% of the units. And then those folks go into the open pool, and then you go through the lottery ranking for the open pool. So people who live and work in town have a really great chance. Yeah.
So what if, just curious, so what if you have somebody who works in town, can't afford to live here, but wants to come back? Let's say they grew up here, do they?
If they work in town, they're eligible for this local preference pool.
Okay.
So you don't have to live. You
Okay.
have a job and
Live and work. Okay, I just want to make sure.
You know, you can live here now, but what if you work in another part of the county? You know, I would say you can't live and work.
No.
It has to be one or the other.
one or the other.
I'm changing it to or.
And also, I hope that a certain
Or both.
percentage of that lottery will take into account equity and diversity, because that is something that we really lack here in town, and I would like to see more of that, honestly.
Yeah.
That is considered in the rules for
It's
this
already
lottery.
law.
There's a certain percentage
Yeah.
goes into a minority pool for diversity. So
Yeah,
that's,
because that's, you know, I live in Pine Woods, which is, you know, I'm under a federal program there. And I do know that, you know, there isn't enough, that isn't something that's considered in terms of who they choose to live there, which is unfortunate. And I do know too, just to speak to your question, with the federal programs, I know Pine Woods, and the construct properties, they tend to, you know, only pick people that are, you know, from either working in Southern Berkshire County. You know, I know the federal programs, they do allow people to come from out of state, but I don't see a lot of that happening. I only know of one person, in construct housing that is from Tennessee, and the only reason I think she got placed in the new Great Barrington build there was because she had previously worked here in Great Barrington. So
Patty's got her hand up. Patty, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Oh, good. Would you like, you've had your hand up. Would you like to enter the discussion?
I have a question. It's a little bit more macro than the stuff you guys are talking about. Is that all right? Or do you want to just finish?
Sure.
Okay. And it might be helpful because Mike is in the room. So here's my question. So it's about how the funds from the Affordable Housing Trust are allocated and overseen, I guess is my question. So let's say, I'm good with examples, but let's say the Affordable Housing Trust is a piggy bank, and you save the money and you save the money, and then you see a bike you really want to buy. So how does it work when you guys want to allocate funds towards something? Is there like a way I could learn about this? There's like a Schoolhouse Rock video or a manual?
Well, you just watched it. We just voted to create some, to spend some funds to work on the acquisition of the Morris land. And we just voted to spend some money to create some playground equipment at Pine Woods. So if you attend our meetings, you'll see us take action.
So every penny that's in the Affordable Housing Trust, it's allocated according to the people sitting on the board, and there's no limit. So there's never a point at which the select board or the taxpayers or the town warrant or anything has to be approved. You can
Sure.
spend as much or as little that you want, as long as it's in the trust fund.
Well, we can't spend more than we have.
The warrant already approved the money that is in the Affordable Housing Trust that over 2 years and 3 years ago. And that money is not just subject to the vote of this board, it's subject to the rules of the Community Preservation, committee, the state rules around CPC funds. So that's one set of limitations. That's where other potential revenue sources such as the residential inclusionary bylaw that was passed at last year's town meeting comes into play, because those funds might have different rules. But to your point, the state has recognized that housing trusts often face resistance, frankly, in terms of creating housing. And that's why within the confines of rules around things like, for example, income limitations and CPC limitations, that the trusts have relative autonomy in terms of the decision-making within the confines of state rules and federal rules. And that is by design of Affordable Housing Trusts.
Patty, does that answer your question?
Yeah, as an overview, I can dig a little deeper, but that's a good start. So thanks.
Okay,
Can I just mention two more things?
sure, by all means.
Thank you. So as revisions are made to the plan, it's unclear whether those will be posted on the website for public review, because you have a very short period in which everyone is reviewing this plan. So it would be helpful to hear how you're addressing comments made by the public about the plan. Also, I think there's what I love about planning is that you don't really have to consider cost. I mean, you do at some point, but your first layer is the review of a project, or, should be. I don't know if the town has considered, in terms of infrastructure improvements, particularly because the sewer analysis hasn't been completed yet, but will shortly be. But as it goes forward in reviewing any proposal, and specifically the one on Glendale Middle Road, should there be one, what would the town's threshold be for capitalization of that project? In other words, if you can only build 3 houses or 5 houses, and you have to put in $500,000, whatever, for the infrastructure improvements. I would imagine that the town would at some point say, yes, we're adopting a plan to facilitate affordable housing in appropriate areas. However, cost is a very important part of whether or not this proposal actually is affordable. So then you back into site considerations.
Yeah.
So I think that's something we haven't really talked about.
No.
But it is relevant.
Can we just address that one quickly? It's not just water and sewer. You've got to create roadways, get electric in there, light, maybe a light, who knows, around the cul-de-sac, if there were a cul-de-sac. In other projects around the county, that might typically be like a MassWorks grant, or maybe because we're Justice 40, we could get a federal grant for that. This is what Smitty Pignatelli is urging with this $4 billion, I think it's $4 billion bond bill for housing that the state is doing, for us to have sort of shovel-ready proposals around some of this. So perhaps what we do is we look at funding those costs through a MassWorks grant or through some other state housing bond bill funding source. Once again, though, as it goes to the larger question, Don here's the chair of an elected board. Okay, they get final say, just like any elected board. So if they want to recommend spending $2 million to extend the sewer to Glendale Middle Road for this project, okay, I don't know that that would pass or even be a good idea. That's my point is that that's an elected board. Then every warrant item goes to the select board that Jamie and I are on. It also has to get approved. And then every appropriation like that has to be approved at town meetings. So there's multiple layers of sanity checks, that make sure that things we propose make sense for the town. And I don't think that there's going to be, personally, my sense just is, from hearing about what infrastructure specifically is in the road right now, my guess is, not being an engineer and not being somebody who knows diddly about water, sewer, or infrastructure, is that this isn't going to support big giant scale. It just isn't, so I don't know. I think that what we need to do is go through a process to answer all these questions. What would be the rules of the lottery? What can the land, if it has to be septic and it has to be wells, what can it support? Yeah, exactly. Maybe you do them in a slightly more dense area to maintain open space, but we have a model with our town, cluster bylaw, which is already on the books, that deals with that, in terms of like as a model to inform what we might want to do. Every one of these questions is going to have to be discussed, debated, and decided upon. And
My understanding is that cluster development proposal or bylaw has never been used by the town of Stockbridge. We did talk about that last week. I don't know. I mean, you may have other examples.
I thought they used it at the development over by Wyndham Hill.
That was not my understanding based on.
I don't know. I'm not for sure. Yeah.
2 weeks ago, whatever it was, but obviously,
Yeah, the one just south of Wyndham Hill. Yeah, the one on the other side of Elm Court. I thought they used it. Maybe not.
There's also the competitive bidding process that's always, it's
Yeah.
required.
That's pretty.
Yeah.
That's been a long.
Yeah. And then, I'm sorry, there was just one more thing, and then I'm gonna shut up. 40B, we talk about this all the time. I don't know, if it is exercised in other projects in town, how that would, I don't want to use the term undermine, because I know the whole idea is to expedite. But it's unclear who might get cut out of the review of a project because of the need to fast track. I mean, even with something as sensitive as, Pine Woods and even the Mars property, there are wetlands on there. I know that there are also source of buffer requirements, going from land that's impermeable to permeable has all sorts of implications for existing, neighbors or butters who are not only on Glendale Middle Road, but on the, is that Cherry? Castle Hill. Castle Hill Road, some big lots over there. At any rate, but changes to the plan, how you will address those. The plan also talks about additional funding for housing trust. There are scarce resources. I know probably you have housing authority here. We didn't really get into like structural organizational issues associated with the plan itself and how the town will be run going forward in light of the relatively new committee that is, that I'm sitting looking at. Yeah, so anyway, just a few things.
Okay, Jackie, thank you.
You're welcome.
You're terrific. We're going to appoint you as a adjunct member.
All right.
Thank you very, very much. We're going to call this to a close. We do need to set a next meeting, but we won't know when we're going to have the material, so I'll have to circulate to everybody.
Could we make one that's just before April 30th? Because we're going to have to.
You want to pick a date and see, and then we'll see if we can have it, if Steve can get us the information.
And I want grants on the agenda, if you don't mind.
Pardon?
I want consideration of grant opportunities on the agenda.
On the next one?
Yes.
Okay, sure.
How about Monday, the 29th?
Monday, the 29th?
That's kind of close.
It is, yeah, but we may not get it. Well, then there's the week before.
You know what, I think we better approach Mr. Morris
Let's,
about an extension.
I'll know Thursday.
yeah, let's just,
Yeah,
let's wait till
wait.
after we know.
Okay,
How about Monday, 22nd?
Yeah.
that's next week.
Yeah,
That's Earth Day.
good.
It's also Passover. I won't-
It's also
That's Passover?
Oh.
Oh, yeah, no,
I
no,
won't be
no.
here.
We're not having anything on Passover.
Emails, one of the few things you can do is communicate outside of the meeting, so.
Yeah.
That's right.
23rd?
Why don't I Thursday send to you Wednesday?
Is it, Mark, are you going away?
Well, I was on a contract.
Because right now, if they're not gonna have it by next week, you probably should approach Morris on an extension period.
Right,
But I'll know more Thursday.
okay.
Okay,
We could be patient.
excellent. Jackie, I'd just like to, Patrick gave a lot of good information, but I would like to stress to all of you that these meetings are recorded, and you're on the town website. If you go there, you can watch everything that we do.
CTS.
Sometimes there's some few weeks to post.
Yeah,
It may not be immediately posted, but besides the minutes, besides being able to attend by Zoom, you can also watch any previous ones of our meetings. So I think the town makes a really, and certainly we do, effort to make sure that everything that we do is out in the open and that you have multiple opportunities to find out what we're doing, in addition to coming to. And we love it that you come to our meetings, so please come again.
We have 16 slices of pizza if anyone wants
That's
it.
right, and we have pizza.
I know, it's right in the back. I can't believe Michael didn't bring it up. It's letting it cold.
The other thing, just a second, are we gonna, I need to know, is everybody gonna waffle about the meeting and I'm gonna just pick a date and see if you can come?
well, we're gonna look here on Thursday and then we'll just do it online.
Okay, so I'll be in touch. And I would like to stress on this ADU, no more discussion on it, but just to stress, there's really very little we can do until we find out what the state is going to do, because the state is going to pass something.
They're also going to, as part of it, you can actually read the bill that is, in the legislature now. And part of it is that gives towns the ability to regulate, use around the ADUs. So even if it's an ADU by right, the town could say, for example, well, you can't do 2 short-term rentals. You can't do, they can put parameters, towns can put parameters around.
Read some, all they say is you may put reasonable.
That's right.
But they haven't defined.
I know they have it, yeah, I know.
So-
But
I know that ADUs are a big concern of everyone, but the key thing is we have to see what the state passes and how much flexibility we have locally. So,
and I'm not making this up. I literally sat with with the Secretary Augustus, who's the housing secretary, and he outlined exactly what they plan on doing. And he did it at Heaton Court a week and a half ago. This is not, there's going to be reasonable regulations that towns can put in place, but we won't be able to ban them. Yeah, anyways.
all right, so motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.